And now, Little Italy Podcast and the Deborah Kobylt Live Show.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our Little Italy podcast and also Deborah Kobylt Live. And look who's joining me today, Joe Tutino. Thanks for being here, Joe. You are the voice, the play-by-play announcer of the LA Galaxy. Let's face it, Italians love their soccer. You are also the longest tenured team broadcaster in Los Angeles. That's quite a feat. Congratulations and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm just fortunate to be in. When you're around this long, I guess people look to replace you. So I'll try to lay low as long as I can, so I can get a few more years under my belt.
You know what, Joe? Just knowing you, the little bit that I've known you, I think that's going to happen. I'll tell you why. You're great at what you do, and you're such a humble guy. It's really incredible. But to be the longest tenured team broadcaster, we're talking Los Angeles here.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive. So I always like to dial back, especially for our Little Italy podcast, about you and your life and growing up in an Italian household. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, for me, it's normal. I mean, a normal life. But for my friends growing up, they always looked at us a little bit different, a louder home. They're wondering, we project pretty well at the dinner table. People wonder if we were getting in a fight, and we're just having dinner, that type of thing. Homemade bread, homemade cookies, lots of pasta, things like that. All the stereotypical things that you would say about an Italian household, we had it to points where, my mom still doesn't speak any English, even though she's been here 60 years, and even aunts and uncles and so forth broke English to no English, so we learned how to speak Sicilian, or the Sicilian dialect, from our parents' homes, their hometowns.
Right, and they are both from Sicily, mom and dad, right? And it wasn't really all that easy for mom when she came here to is that right? And I know dad was a fisherman. Tell us a little bit about the two of them.
Certainly not easy for either one of them. My dad lost his father in World War II, and my father was 11 years old, and he had to go out and fend for food back then. In Italy, and so he didn't get paid with any money. He got paid with food, grain, whatever, and he brought it back home, and his mom would go sell it, and that's how they survived there until he was able to be sponsored to come to the United States by his uncle. My mom came to the United States. She was, from what I understand, 7 months pregnant, and on an airplane for the first time in her life, and going to a country she'd never been to before to start her new life with her husband. So a lot went on there,
Yeah, I was going to say she was married first
yes,
when she came here. Right, they got married in Italy, and then she came over later at 7 months pregnant by herself, not knowing the language. That took a lot of guts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole generation has a lot more guts than we do. Honestly, my dad, they got married on January 11th. My mom, or January 10th, my mom came here. I believe it was October 21st when she came to the United States, and my brother was born a month later. My oldest brother.
Wow. How many kids?
3 boys. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. 7 and 5 years older than me.
Yeah.
So I brought up.
So, as a kid, you loved to play what? What sports did you play?
For me, it was soccer. My brothers played, Little League baseball, but for me, for whatever reason, soccer was just finding its imprint in the United States in the middle of the late 70s. And because I was so much younger than my brothers, I was around the elders. The elders are speaking Italian. They're talking soccer. In my case, the San Diego Sockers started playing in the North American Soccer League, and that was something that my parents liked to go to, my dad liked to go to, and therefore I was exposed to it, and that was my little league.
Did you want to play pro?
Oh, gosh. I wish I could. I thought I was good enough at some point growing up, I think. But once I got into high school, I think the realization was, let's see here, you're all of 5'7", you're obese.
Oh no!
You're probably not going to be a professional athlete. And so I had an epiphany in my 4th grade, my 4th period high school history class, and walked into my counselor's office and I said, I know what I want to be. And I said, I want to be a journalist, a sports journalist. And he put me into the journalism class, and I was the sports director or sports editor, I guess, of the newspaper for the last couple of years. And then when I got out of high school, then I had another epiphany. I'll go into broadcasting instead.
Now, I know how Italian parents can be, especially of that generation, right? They're like, wait, you want to do what? You know,
Right.
because it doesn't seem like a real job, whether it's acting or broadcasting, writing.
Hmm.
That doesn't seem real. Those seem like hobbies at the time. What did mom and dad say when you wanted to pursue this as a career?
Yeah, they were not happy because they saw me as a writer. They said, well, you're having success as a writer. Why don't you just be a journalist? They could wrap their head around that, right?
They could. Okay.
Yeah, they could wrap their mind around that because, they can see it's written, right? There's something on a newspaper or whatever it might be. When I told them I wanted to be a broadcaster and a sports broadcaster, then that was something that was totally out of left field and something that was, not conservative enough, not something that is, we can touch. And therefore, they were not happy with that and had a few people talk to me along the way in the family to see if they could change my mind and give me things like, hey, well, do you have something to fall back on if this doesn't work out? Well, luckily for me, it did to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think about that generation quite a bit because my folks were that way as well. You needed something to fall back on. Deb, go to law school, which of course I applied, and then I thought, no, I even got in. And I thought, no, but it was scary because they had so little and had to work so hard. And we all know, you want it a little easier for your kids, right? You start to understand where they're coming from.
Well, absolutely. As I said at the top, my dad came to the United States with $13 in his pocket. That's it.
Yeah.
And again, he had to learn how to speak English on his own and so forth. They came to Little Italy in San Diego, and he had it really hard. Unfortunately for him. And so I think that gets instilled in you at a young age to be conservative. My father had an opportunity through the early years in the 60s and 70s to really make money in real estate in San Diego because he was a fisherman. And those guys would come in with a pretty good haul back then. They'd be gone for 2 and 3 months. It was a hard job. But when they came in with a pretty good haul of money. And if you were aggressive enough, especially at that time, you would have got in at the bottom level and probably had a few apartments here and there and lived a comfortable life. But my father, unfortunately for him, had the mindset of saying, no, I need to be conservative here. I'm going to put all my money away in terms of max out my Social Security and max out my pension, and that'll be fine. And so he was, kind of afraid to take a step forward.
Risks were scary. We had the same situation once again in New Jersey when they were selling beachfront property.
Yeah.
Back then it was a beach haven and a house and everything. I think, gosh, we're not going back that far. We're talking the 70s. Was like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And I'm like, get it. They're like, no. And they were afraid. Could you imagine what that costs now? Beachfront property in Beach Haven, New Jersey. But they did, for them, what was the right thing, because the thought of even going back to the way things were was just too tough, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. My mom, on the other hand, she came from a town where they had a market, and everybody would come and get their pasta and whatever from my mom's market. And after World War II, people were doing things on credit, and that's how they did. They write it down. My grandmother would write it down, and then at some point that person would get enough money to pay them back. And so my mom was actually in a pretty good place financially, from what I understand of what they tell me, that they had the market, they had some land, they had a house. They just decided once my mom's sister, my aunt, came to the United States, then I think that opened up the door for my mom to say, okay, well then I'll come to the United States also. And when she met my father and so forth, she fell in love with him, and that's how that happened. And so it's two different roads. My father was some serious poverty, unfortunately. My mom was kind of in a better place, growing up.
Now, when Dad left for many months at a time, you said Mom didn't speak English. Was that tough? Did it fall on you to help out in the family?
No, this is kind of before my time. I just go by the stories that were told. My mom was by herself when my father went out, and it was a difficult time. My 2 brothers were born at the time, and finally, I think my dad, from what I understand, had a trip that was rather scary for him, and he decided that it's time to stay at home. And that was it was before I was born, 1968, 1969. And then my father decided that he would go into construction work, and he was basically a cement finisher for the remainder of his working career. And again, a union man, and of course, max out your pension, and that's the way it's going to be. And this is our home. We bought our home. We're not going to sell our home. We're staying right here. And so to this day, my parents, or my mom, that is, still lives in her home, which is great.
So let's go forward again.
Okay.
You're out of high school. You decided, hey, I want to be a sports broadcaster. And gosh, the rest is sort of history. You started young and you just kept pedaling from there at a pretty fast pace. Take us there.
Well, like I said, out of high school, I saw a commercial for Columbia School of Broadcasting out of Hollywood. And I felt that I can do this. I felt that I see the games, football games, soccer games. I see them developing ahead of what's going to happen. And then I thought that maybe I could be that broadcaster. And so I called the satellite campus in San Diego, and the director of the school happened to be a friend of my brother's. So that was my in. And I went to Columbia School of Broadcasting. And, those type of schools, unfortunately, are not around anymore in the state of California. But while I was there, I got an internship at the NBC affiliate in San Diego, at what was Extra News Talk 690 in San Diego, and with the San Diego Sockers team at the time. And they allowed me to do play-by-play and do a tape deck as part of my internship. So that's how I was cutting my teeth. And then 6 months into my internship at the radio station, I got hired as the morning news producer. And 6 months after that, I finished the program at Columbia School of Broadcasting.
Wow. And then what? Like right after that, after being a news producer?
Well,
because as a news producer, you weren't on the air, obviously, right?
No.
When you were producing the news. But first of all, you were very young at the time anyway. But did you always have your eyes set on, that's where I want to be?
That's where I thought I'd be. Sports radio was just in its infancy. We're talking about 1989. WFAN, I think, was a couple of years before us. I think there was WIP in Philadelphia. And then in October 1990, our station flipped from news talk to all sports, and it became the first all sports station on the West Coast. So at 20 years old, I'm in the right place at the right time. And then going back to news producing, that's meaning you're getting in there at 3 a.m., you're taking all the feeds, you're taking all the audio, you're putting them on what they called carts back then, and you're writing around that audio, right? Wraparounds. And so that's what I was doing. And so all of us had a news background starting the sports station, which was a great fundamental to have back then. Yeah. And I wish today's people talking sports had news backgrounds, because we see a lot of crazy things going on today. But that's a different story. But the station was the home of the San Diego Chargers. We turned into the home of the LA Kings when Wayne Gretzky was there, and they went to the Stanley Cup for the first time in club history. We had the UCLA Bruins when they won the National Basketball Championship once again. We had USC on our station as well. So we had all the big properties on our station, and all of us cut our teeth, young guys working 12 to 14 hours a day because we were pigs in mud. We were happy to be there.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be a pig in mud right now if that was the situation there. What an incredible opportunity. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, talk to us about some of the incredible broadcasters that we've come to know that you've worked with along the way.
Well, along the way, I think for the LA marketplace that a lot of them have found homes in, there was Jeannie Zelasco that worked alongside me. She found her home on Fox Baseball for many years. Kurt Sandoval is also in Los Angeles, and he worked with us. Steve Mason and John Ireland, who are still on the air at ESPN Radio in LA, they started out on my station as well. Brian Kilmeade started out on my station. You know him from Fox News Channel as well. Right. And so those are the people that I worked alongside of along the way, and people that are with me as well was a name that old-time broadcast people will know, Chet Forty, who was the original director of Monday Night Football, as well as ABC's Wide World of Sports. And so while those guys came in and were hosts, and I had this goofy title of executive producer, I think for me, they all rubbed off on me in some way, because I was a young guy in a managerial position at 22 years old, and I learned a lot from them. And the one that's in my heart forever is that Jim Rome and I worked together on the original Jim Rome show, and I was the original producer for the first 5 years. And then we took that to national syndication. And we got a lot of experience that way as well. So it was a very special time in broadcasting, even though when I got into it, a lot of the old timers would say it's coming to an end, whatever that was, the golden age.
Yeah. They all say it's coming to an end, including, look, talk radio too, but it's really not. It's just that people are listening on different platforms, right? They're getting their information in different places. Like maybe they're not on AM radio, for example, but they're someplace else.
And they're watching us like this.
Yeah, and great talent just never goes away. It might, be broadcast in a different form, but it really doesn't. Talk to me about Jim Rome, big fan. Mm-hmm. What do you learn from a guy like that, and from all the people that you mentioned? What do you take away? If you want to be specific, that's great. You're a young guy, you're producing these shows. What did you pick up, even through osmosis? What do you think?
It was a weird thing because Jim and I fit together from day one in terms of our work ethic. We started out with a night show that was 5 hours, 7 to midnight, and it was just he and I. And Jim was the host, and I was the producer, and what is called the board op as well. And back then, I was also on the air as well, doing sports updates in the show. So those are all the hats that I wore at the same time. But Jim and I would come in at 11 a.m., and everybody around the station would think we're nuts because we're going to be on at 7 p.m. But we understood that because of time constraints, in that 7 to midnight show, it's very hard to get big names on the air on East Coast and Central Time. So you're stuck in one time zone. And we understood that, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to come in early. We're going to produce our show back to front. And there's not going to be an hour that's not important on this show that you have to listen to, miss. And so we started to get all the A+ guests on the station. The Reggie Jacksons of the world. 1992 All-Star Game was in San Diego that year, and we said, okay, we're going to have access to all these Hall of Famers. Johnny Mize of the New York Yankees, Dom DiMaggio, the Boston Red Sox, guys like that. And of course, we wanted to get Joe DiMaggio on, and everybody knew Joe never spoke. But there was one guy from San Diego that everybody, I think, knows is Ted Williams. And Ted, unfortunately, not long before that, had suffered a stroke. And so he had not spoken to anybody. So it's kind of a big fish type of thing to get Ted Williams on the air. And my in was Ted Williams grew up in my neighborhood, and Ted Williams went to my high school. And a gentleman by the name of Bob Breitbard, who was the president of the San Diego Hall of Champions, also went to Hoover. And through him, I was able to reach Ted. And through his son, John Henry, I was able to fax him questions. And eventually, Ted Williams came on our show and came on our station. And that was a big get back then.
Absolutely incredible. But I love how you came in early. I mean, people, this is what it's about, right? Anyone who wants to be in a field even similar to anything going on in broadcasting, it's all about the preparation. Because let's face it, no matter what you're doing, figure skating, broadcasting, acting, it's preparation.
Yeah.
Because once you're on, it looks easy. But it wasn't. It's just all the prep that goes into it. And it makes for such an interesting and phenomenal show. And all that research goes right here in your head, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Jim, by the way, nobody works harder than Jim. And maybe I work as hard as him. And it's funny because I'm kind of an anomaly today, I believe, that people wonder why I'm at the stadium so early. And I tell them, well, I need to be at the stadium early. So the game comes to me. I'm not here to walk on in and just announce a game. I want to have the day come to me. So then when the game gets underway, I can regurgitate that along the way.
Really incredible. So talk to me about some of the folks top of mind that you've interviewed, famous or not, that really stuck with you, that were really impressionable interviews, or even one that was like, gosh, did I really just talk to him or her? Talk to me about that.
I think it's a weird thing for me because I grew up never being starstruck. And I think that might come from my heritage and my culture.
Yeah.
But guys that have big effects on my life, and I think Wayne Gretzky is one of them. We began a relationship with Wayne that first year when the Kings went to the Stanley Cup, and he was on the air after each playoff game all the way through the Cup, and that really started something special and a friendship that I think I still have today. But my best friend in this business and the biggest name that I could tell you about is Tony Gwynn, and he really taught me a lot, not only about baseball, but just how to be in life. There was never one time that I would call it on Tony and Tony would say no. There was never one time, not once. And we're talking about the greatest hitter since Ted Williams to play in baseball. And, we did a show 3 times a week. We talked baseball. It was a 5-minute show. It would probably be 40 minutes of cutting time in order to make that thing work in 5 minutes. But just one of the best humans that you'll ever meet in sports. There was a lot of guys in football that host shows with me, like Deacon Jones, who did a football show with me, and Mark Collins as well was on that same show. And you just get to know so many people from so many different backgrounds. And there's a commonality. The commonality is work. Every one of those people who achieved left part of their soul in that field. And to understand that and to make that a commitment, that's a big deal. And I think a lot of people today, they have second thoughts over doing something like that.
Wow. And now you said Tony had a big impression on you. He was a great guy. He would never say no. What did I say when we started this interview? You have such a terrific reputation, not just as a broadcaster, but as a person. You're the same way. When we spoke off camera, you said, no, we're going to make this happen. We're going to make it happen, whatever it is. So I do think he rubbed off on you. So well done, I will say to you, Joe. Well done.
Well, thank you. I'm just lucky to have been around some very good people. And those people rubbed off on me. Starting with my dad and my mom, and obviously my brothers. But in the industry, I've been lucky to be around some of the greats that at the time I didn't realize who they actually were. But afterwards, you realize that you've been fortunate to be around them.
Soccer in this country isn't exactly like the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
How can that change? Because I love soccer, or frankly, it's called football. It's called football elsewhere, but here we call it soccer. How can we get it to the status, or can we, of football in this country or baseball? Can that happen?
Well, I think it might over time. I don't think it'll be the National Football League in this country, and it may not even be college football in this country. Right. But I think it's in a good place. We talk about demographics and to try to beat our chest of where they are, but among the young demographics, 12 to 24, soccer in this country is doing very well. I think what they need to do is be able to capture them as they get older, when they get to the 25, 54 number, and capture them to make that their loyalty selection. And we still have a way to go, because not only are we fighting the other sports in this country, we're also fighting to be credible among the biggest leagues in the world. And those are all available now on any platform, any television station, whatever it might be. You can see the Premier League, you can see the Serie A, you can see the Bundesliga, you can see La Liga. So in Major League Soccer or American soccer, we have to elevate ourselves to that style of play. And we have some work to do, although we're making strides. We're in a good place right now.
Talk to us about working with the LA Galaxy. What's it like when you go in there? What's the day-to-day? Tell me about the job, especially for people, especially young people who are so interested in what you do.
Well, I think today we have groups of young people that are just busybodies working on everything from the social channels to the foundation to marketing and to ticketing and just kind of working all together. And it's great because you see about 25 to 35-year-olds all working together, and it's a pretty good group that the Galaxy has. And for somebody like me to walk in, it's always an interesting thing, because I bring in older fundamentals, right, of where I come from, traditional broadcasting, and I bring it in, and then I'm kind of like the older statesman in there. I hate to say that, because that's a bad word today, but when I walk in there, I look at what they're doing, and I'm always asking questions. Why are we doing this and why are we doing that? But then when it's time for me to do what I do as a broadcaster, usually everybody just kind of gets out of the way and lets me do my thing.
Because you can't replicate it. The talent is there, and it doesn't matter if you're 25 or 55. It's always there. So you're right. Those young people will step out of the way and just sort of watch what you're doing. You mentioned ageism a little bit, not that you use that word, but I'm hoping it's kind of going by the wayside a little bit. At least I think so, because I go out to do certain types of work, and they're like, yeah, come on in. And I'm hoping that that's the case. What are your thoughts?
I hope so, but I think it's been a young person's business for a long time, especially
Hmm.
on television, unfortunately, or fortunately for the whatever you want to look at it. I think in my case, I look to continue to grow and be better at what I do, and embrace whatever's coming at me.
Yeah.
Obviously, our business is changing. It is transitioning in a big way. And for me, I look at it and say, okay, I don't take it as a challenge. I take it as an opportunity, and to want to embrace it
Mm.
and to say, okay, it's moved over here. Okay, well, that means I need to move over here, and that's fine with me. Now, what it does for a lot of the older audiences, unfortunately, as we're getting into a lot of app-based programming, a lot of the older audiences that were used to having a channel 10 or a channel 15 or a channel 205, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to
No.
start. And I feel bad for them because they feel like they're being left behind.
No, I can see where it's difficult, right? Because even smart TVs, right? If you don't
Right,
have a smart TV now, it's like, how do you even get your stuff? I suppose you could have the cable box, but
right,
even they're doing away with that stuff. So
right.
it does get confusing. I mean, I remember my parents, they were confused with an ATM card. It just is what it is, you know? No, they were. The
Well,
ATM card was like,
a quick
wait,
story.
how did money come out of a machine? I don't understand this. So they would still go into the bank, right, and get their money and put
Sure.
it in their pocket. But I get that, right? I really do understand it. The whole app-based thing, you're right. I'm not quite sure how to handle that with people who are a little confused with new technology. Maybe their kids, grandkids can help them. What were you
Right,
going to say?
and that's the way it was. I mean, when I was a child, I was the human remote control. My dad would call my name, Joe, and I'll be out playing with my friends, and when you run inside, hey, change the channel, and you change the channel until your dad saw something he liked. And it's usually a spaghetti western, and then you can go back outside and play. But that's how it was.
Yeah, come on, kids. Be nice to your parents and grandparents, please, because someday you're going to be there. You talked about your dad. Let's
Yeah,
dial it back
sure,
to mom, right? You're a good Italian son. You help mom still,
yeah,
right? You help her do what it is that she needs to do. I did the same thing with both of my
sure,
parents.
good for you.
It's a tough place to be sometimes, but you wouldn't have it any other way, right?
Yeah, it's you know what? When my dad passed away about 18 years ago, it was a tragic accident for us, and all of a sudden, you just find yourself in a situation. You look and you say, okay, my mom doesn't speak any English. She doesn't drive anymore. I'm the young one. I'm the single one. Without saying anything, this is falling on me, and I understand it. And
Yeah,
you go through the process, the healing process when you lose a loved one, and part of that process was coming to grips with the fact that it's become a badge of honor. And so what I try to do is make my trips as short as possible to make sure that I'm back to at least touch home base for a couple hours a day and say, okay, you
yeah.
okay? Everything's good. All right, great. Spend a couple hours a day, have an Italian version of dinner, which is usually early afternoon, and try to keep that a low calorie count, and make sure she's fine, and whatever bills need to be taken care of, grocery shopping. Every week we go see my dad at the cemetery, and while that became a chore early on, later on it's more like, no, we have to do this because I understand what the value is. It's
Yeah,
cathartic. It's important.
it's a blessing, is what it
Yeah,
is. And as I said, I was there doing that with both my parents. My mom passed first. She had an accident. Dad then came to live with us. And until his last day, we took care of him. And it was not always easy, but it was a
sure.
blessing. I wouldn't have had it any other way. I also think it's Italian, right?
It
It's
is.
very Italian. A lot of people want to put their parents someplace else. I'm like, no, you're coming to stay with us. And I know she doesn't live with you, but
No.
she's close enough where you go and check in
She's
on her.
10
And I
minutes
love
away
that.
from me. Yeah, she's 10 minutes away from me, and that's probably the reason why I still stay where I am. Uh,
Yeah.
Even though it'd be smarter to move and do something better for myself, but I think it's important for me to be close right
Yeah.
now, especially now. She's 87 years old. God willing, in November she'll be 88. If you're paying attention, you understand your parents are slowing down, and you need to
Yeah.
make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, better for yourself. I don't know about that, Joe. You're the longest running
Uh,
guy, right? Come on. So I'd say you did pretty darn well. Anything that you want to say to our audience, to some young people who want to be in your shoes, to the people who watch you all the time and are big, big fans. I mean, I had some people texting me today saying, "Oh, you're having him on?" They were so excited to have you on.
Well, you're very gracious and you're a great liar. Thank you very much.
No.
But to young people who are getting in this business, and I've said this to a few of the Galaxy fans who have their own little podcasts and so forth, and I said this to my staff along the way, is that be authentic, be who you are. And I'll just go from the sports side of things. Everybody wanted to be Chris Berman. And all the young guys would take his catchphrases or whatever it would be and so forth. And eventually you have to understand that you can't be somebody else better than somebody else. The only one you're going to be good at is yourself. And that takes a little time. It takes repetition to find your voice. And that's what I would say to anybody, a young person getting into this business. Never stop learning and never think that you've learned it all. The only thing I can say to Galaxy fans is that I wish I could be better for them.
Oh, I would say you're way better than better for them. So what an incredible thing to say. I'm just going to put you on the spot here. Last night, did you watch LeBron?
I watched the highlights. I did. I caught it when I heard he was closing in, and I said, okay, let me watch and see let's see history happen. And what I love to see is the fact that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was there. And that's the one thing that, he was able to pass the baton, and I love that. And I think it's such a special moment. And in the NBA, I think when you look at LeBron James, you say, okay, this is the right person to take this mantle, right? And that's the way I look at it.
Incredible. And there were his two sons watching him and cheering him on. And you're right about Kareem. He was so gracious as he stood there and congratulated LeBron. I just love seeing that moment. Sports are sports, whether it's soccer, basketball, baseball, we love them all, right? And of course, the football, of course, is coming up, the Super Bowl. Right. I love all of them myself. So, gosh, you've been such a wonderful, wonderful guest. I so appreciate you taking the time because I know you're taking off very soon to go to work.
But thank you very much for having me. And you've worked through some calamities to make all this happen. So I appreciate that. And one other thing that we've talked about on the phone, if I can introduce the topic, is
please.
Let's every other culture supports their own. And I would hope that at some point the Italian culture in this country, because as much as we say we're Italians, people in Italy look at us as Americans. We are Italian Americans, and I would hope that the Italian American community in the United States will understand that and support the Italian American community, because it's easy to be forgotten.
Yeah, and we also spoke about, support one another. If someone is doing something you would like to do, or someone is doing something that you think is extraordinary, support it. So I know exactly what you're saying there, but could you elaborate a little more on that?
I just think that we've my personal experience is, and then maybe this is an anomaly, my personal experience is that we have a lot of people that we come in contact with in our community, in our culture, that admire you from afar and maybe take some wins because they know you, and then close by they don't seem to be willing to have the same type of respect, the mutual respect. And for me, I think it's important to mutually respect somebody, to see the whole and feel the whole. And so if we have an opportunity to lift somebody else up to where we are, or maybe even push them further than where we are, I think we should do that. It makes you a better person.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some experiences myself, within the Italian American community that I thought would have been so supportive, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So I hear you, and I think you're right about that. If I support you, it's better for me. You support me, it's better for the next one. It's like, just bring it back around. It's all good. We're all in it together, right? As Italian Americans.
And when the little Italies were little Italies, that's what those communities did. We should do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to seeing you again, Joe. I really do. Congratulations on all your success. And stay in touch. And one of these days, I'd love to go with you and see what you do there at the Galaxy. I think that would be great fun. I would enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope I don't bore you when that day comes.
Never. I love the behind the scenes. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Joe. And thank you, everybody, for joining our podcast, Little Italy podcast, Little Italy of LA podcast. And of course, we simulcast it on Deborah Kobylt Live. Please, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then, of course, in the audio version, which will probably sound terrific because Joe has that broadcaster's voice. So you can find us as an audio podcast as well, anywhere, really. iHeart, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, just wherever you get them. Just look up our names and you will find our show. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And as always, we love to see your comments. Take care. Bye-bye.